Chapter 2274 Demon, Angel. Chapter 2274 Demon, Angel. Hunyo and the other women gradually broke through to the severing mundane tier. It could not be helped. Previously, they had not had the free time to study the regulations of the Origin Magic Cube. Furthermore, with such *** use of the Origin Magic Cube, they naturally could not be compared to Ling Han. However, it was fine once they had advanced into the severing mundane tier. They could disguise themselves and move freely in the foreign realm. At present, there was completely no difference between Ling Han and any other person of the foreign realm. His forehead had a 6-petal lotus flower, with 5 leaves beneath it. This was the most direct sign of cultivation level for a foreign realm cultivator. 6 petals meant that he was in the severing mundane tier, and 5 leaves indicated that he had completed the 5th severance. Of course, the lotus flower could also be withdrawn, and there was no need to show it to others. After Hunyo and the other women advanced into the severing mundane tier, their rate of cultivation immediately sped up. The major tier was a barrier, especially when it was a switch from the regulations of the celestial realm to the regulations of the foreign realm. This was really, really difficult. But once they had crossed over, it would be a level road ahead of them. Of course, Liu Yutong and the other women were initially only at the first severance as well, and definitely could not be compared to Hunyo, the Empress, and bewitching Maiden Ru. Ling Han decided to switch locations. The time acceleration effect of 10 times was really too low, and he was not short of cash. Previously, he had robbed countless celestial kings of all their wealth. At present, he only wanted to spend, and spend. He first understood a vague outline of the situation in the foreign realm, and then set off, heading to Fire Beacon City. It was a 5-star city, with time cultivation chambers that reached an efficiency as high as 500x time acceleration boost. As Ling Han saw it, he had to recover his cultivation level to the Immortal Palace tier as soon as possible, no matter what. He purposely bought a carriage for transport. This trip to Fire Beacon City would take as long as 3 years, and that time could not be wasted. Furthermore, he had also spent a lot of money to build the carriage itself as a time cultivation chamber as well. Really, not even the slightest bit of time would be wasted. They exited the city and headed north. Very soon, Ling Han discovered that aside from the regulation of darkness, the foreign realm also had another type of regulations. Regulations of light. Light and darkness were opposites, and were incompatible with each other. Where there was light, there would definitely be no darkness, and where there was darkness, there would be no light. They were even more stalking opposites than water and fire, with absolutely no possibility of coexistence. When Ling Han sensed the regulations of light, he, too, had entered into a completely different area. These words were spoken by the coachman, also a young man. He, too, had snow-white feathered wings, with a halo above his head, his eyes like balls of lightning. Long too. The young man that had spoken previously showed a hint of wariness. So Fairy Yunhe has arrived. Forgive the impoliteness. Now that you know, Scram, the coachman, Long Tu, said disdainfully. Long Tu, my respect is for Fairy Yunhe, not you, the young man said. Our Lady Dala is ranked equally with Fairy Yunhe, so what are you so proud about? Long Tu smiled arrogantly. How can Dala be capable of being our fairy's equal? A horse really doesn't know it has a long face. Arrogance. The young man from before immediately moved, leaping towards the carriage. How dare you? Boom, a palm struck from within the carriage. It was as fair as jade, yet bore a frightening might. Peng, that young man was immediately sent flying, traces of blood at the corner of his lips. Long Tu, ascend the mountain. A voice rang out from the carriage again. It was very crisp and melodious, yet also carried a boundless pride. Understood. Long Tu replied respectfully, his eyes sweeping over the young man on the ground. His face bearing an expression of contempt, he flicked his horse's whip, and the carriage instantly set out again, heading up the mountain. That young man also got to his feet as he wiped away the traces of blood at the corner of his lips, an expression of malice on his face. When his eyes swept over, and spotted Ling Han, he couldn't help but show a furious expression, and shouted, "What are you looking at? Are you tired of living? He was already angered, yet knew that there was absolutely no way he could get his vengeance on that fairy Yunhe. This made him even more pissed off, and he wanted to find someone to vent his anger. Ling Han smiled, and asked, I am only a passerby. Whom have I offended? Me. The young man moved, grabbing out at Ling Han. Wang, his fingers tuned into blades. This blow was definitely not for capturing Ling Han, but rather to kill him. Ling Han originally did not have any positive feelings for people of the foreign realm, and seeing how this man was so arrogant, his killing intent also blazed naturally. With a casual strike, Siwa, a sword light surged past, and Pu, the right arm of this man was severed. If it were not for the fact that he was presently a fugitive, Ling Han would not have restrained himself so much. He would have long since taken the youth's life. Ah! The young man screamed, his face filled with pain. At the same time, there was also disbelief in his expression. This average-looking young man in front of him actually had such great strength. Chapter 2275 100 Fruits Tree. Chapter 2275 100 Fruits Tree. Ling Han stared at that young man, and said menacingly, If you continue to pester me, I will kill you without mercy. That young man glared harshly at Ling Han, yet did not dare say anything else. He was no idiot, and naturally knew just how wide the gap was between himself and Ling Han. If he continued to act stubborn, and said some fierce lines, it would only be asking for his own humiliation. He simply turned and left, actually ascending the mountain first. He should be going off to sow discord. Ling Han thought for a while. There was a celestial medicine on the mountain, and it was certain that a battle would break out between him and the master of that young man if he wanted to interfere, so he was not concerned that the other party would be wailing about him. He was naturally unafraid. It was not that he had not seen monarch stars of the foreign realm before. Worse come to worst, he would extract the power of regulation of the celestial realm from the Black Tower, battle fiercely, and then flee quickly. Of course, this was a last resort. He had entered the foreign realm not merely to evade the pursuit of a foreign realm heavenly venerate. A more important mission was to train himself to a higher level in the foreign realm. Ling Han had made a detailed comparison of the regulations of the two realms. For example, in the case of regulations of time, the foreign realms was more comprehensive. To make a slightly unsuitable analogy, the regulations of the foreign realm and celestial realm were like two houses. One was built from stone, while the other was made from wood. They both could be considered shelters, but the degree of protection they offered was strikingly different. Because he had once been the master of a world, Ling Han had a deeper understanding of this. The overall level of the heaven and earth of the foreign realm was indeed higher than the celestial realm. Thus, the regulations were more comprehensive, detailed, and abundant, and in fact, they had a higher upper limit. There was one thing that Ling Han had long since noticed, and that was that when the heavenly venerate Kai Yang appeared, he had not been struck by lightning from the heavens. Heavenly Venerable Tier had surpassed regulations, and was not recognized by the heaven and earth. The moment they appeared, they would be hated by the heaven and earth, and if they moved, they would suffer a backlash. Both the Jowu Heavenly Venerate and Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable had proved this point. But this could not be seen with Heavenly Venerate Kai Yang. Why? Was it because the overall level of the foreign realm was higher, and could allow Heavenly Venerable Tier to avoid it? Ling Han could not confirm, because it might be that Heavenly Venerate Kai Yang was the only exception. It could also be that he had obtained some kind of secret technique. Ling Han needed a case study of more individuals to confirm this hypothesis. As he thought this, he strode up the mountain. This mountain was not very tall, yet it was extremely majestic, with a vast aura and possessing an indescribable imposing air. As Ling Han walked, a strange feeling rose up in him. It was like there was a mysterious power that was making him want to kneel down in sincere worship. He humphed. For better or worse, he had once been the master of a world, so he was very broad-minded. How could he possibly kneel down to anyone? However, there were really a great many people kneeling on either side of the mountain path. Their faces were filled with reverence and even fanaticism. Ling Han was slightly curious. Could it be that this mountain had some kind of significance? Unfortunately, The map that he had bought was too simple and crude. He could only find the names of great mountains and rivers. As for this mountain, it was too small, and hadn't even been drawn on the map. There were really many people that were kneeling along the way, but they were all 6 lotus without exception. In other words, they were cultivators of the severing mundane tier. There were both those of the demon race and angel race present, but the insect race and holy beasts appeared here as mounts, and their cultivation level also looked to be only 4th or 5th lotus. Ling Han understood now. Like the celestial realm, the dominant role in the cultivation world was still played by humans. Beast type could only cast off their image of a mount or ferocious beast after they had attained a very high cultivation level. There was very great pressure here. It was formed by regulations. Ling Han studied it closely, and discovered that it was of slight value for reference, but compared with the Origin Magic Cube, it was still inferior. It was really only worthy of slight reference. According to that, could it be that this place was some kind of holy land? The people kneeling on the ground were not only worshipping, more of them were comprehending Tao. The mountain was really not very tall, but because of this pressure, Ling Han wasn't walking very fast, either. He only arrived at the summit after a whole 30 minutes. The top was a massive plateau, and there were at least a dozen circles of people here. The highest number was definitely in the outermost circle, where there were more than 200, and there were only 11 people in the innermost circle. And in the center of this plateau, there was a purple celestial tree, bearing fruits of various shapes and types. There were some shaped like humans, beasts, and insects. There was no fruit that looked the same as another. Ling Han counted, and there were a total of 108 fruits here. That adhered to the number of stars in the Big Dipper. As expected, celestial medicines did not just grow randomly. His eyes swept over, and saw that the carriage belonging to Fairy Yunhe that he had seen previously was stopped at a position below the summit, and Long Tu was presently seated at the outermost circle, staring intently at that celestial tree, as if he hoped that a fruit would drop from it. Why was he not harvesting it? Very quickly, Ling Han understood. There was a giant seal beneath the fruit tree, vaguely flickering with light, and causing one to feel trepidation. This was a celestial king tier seal, and might possibly have reached 9th heaven celestial king tier, or 18th lotus. Strange. Since even an 18th lotus king had planted this seal, why did so many people dare to come? Could it be that they wanted to snatch food from the tiger's mouth? Someone turned around, and shouted at Ling Han, "Don't just stand there. Find a place to sit down quickly. Don't you know this is a holy land?" It was a person that was seated in the outermost circle, his expression filled with impatience. That was because Ling Han was standing just behind him, causing him to feel annoyed for some inexplicable reason. Ling Han chuckled. At present, he was not sure of the situation, so he squeezed in outside, and sat together with that person. This person was of the angel race, with an especially handsome appearance. Ling Han began to strike up a conversation with this person, and soon found out the details of this person. He was An Jun, the attendant of a prodigy who was a character like Long Tu. This time, he had also come with his master. Initially, there was absolutely no possibility that he could come here. It was all thanks to his master. And this mountain was called Enmity Mountain, and it had been boosted with great power by an 11th Lotus King after succeeding Tao. He had planted a celestial medicine here, and its name was 100 Fruits Tree. It would only bloom every 10 billion years, and then bear fruit, but it would take another 10 billion years for the fruits to ripen. When flowers bloomed, this would become a holy land of cultivation. The fragrance of the flowers contained the regulations of the Great Tao, and after bearing fruit, an image of Great Tao would soar from the whole celestial medicine. Similarly, it would also have the effects of helping in comprehending Tao. But the most precious entity was naturally still the fruits. Consuming one would bring extremely great benefits. However, supreme regulations had been planted on the celestial medicine, and it could not be easily harvested. It was not that it could not be harvested, but rather harvesting it would be extremely difficult. This was the gift bestowed by that elite on future generations, and was also a test as well. If you wanted it, you could take it. That depended on your own abilities. Why were only 6 lotus cultivators visible here? That was because this 18th lotus elite had thus ruled. Only 6 lotus could ascend this mountain, and others would not be able to do so. Whether their cultivation level was higher or lower, they would not be allowed to join in on the excitement. This 100 fruits tree had borne fruit, whose greatest use was to assist cultivators in advancing to the 5th severance. Of course, it would only be assistance, and did not mean absolute certainty of success. In fact, there was less than 1% that could succeed, but this was already very astonishing. At the very least, it allowed a sliver of hope. Ling Han was astounded. The foreign realm actually had something like that. It should be known that in the celestial realm, only heavenly Tao Jade had that kind of ability, but it could only be produced with an epoch's time. In comparison, the foreign realm was practically freakish. No wonder there were more monarch tears and monarch stars in the foreign realm. This was because this heaven and earth was really too good, being practically filled with benefits. Chapter 2276, Defy. Chapter 2276, Defy. Ling Han's heart throbbed. Liu Yutong and the others were not monarch tears, and originally would definitely not be able to achieve the 5th severance, but if they obtained the celestial fruits of the 100 fruits tree, there was a sliver of possibility that they could break through. Though there was only a sliver, it was still worth a try. However, it was still not time for the fruits to ripen yet. Everyone was just waiting, and as the fruit ripened, they could comprehend the profound secrets of the evolution of the heaven and earth from within them, which was similarly extremely beneficial. Thus, minor characters like Long Tu had also followed suit in ascending the mountain, sitting at the sidelines to study it. Comment. Ling Han sat at one side, filled with enthusiasm. He did not have the women come out, because their grasp of foreign realm regulations was still weaker, and it was not certain that they would be able to deceive 6 lotus. Thus, it was better that they continued to stay inside the Black Tower. He asked that young man how the fruits of the 100 fruits tree could be retrieved. You. That person looked completely disdainful. Just save it. The fact that we are allowed to come is already extremely great luck, so don't have any extravagant hopes. He blabbered on, lecturing Ling Han first. However, he then spoke of the method to retrieve the fruits, and that was to channel their power of regulation to stimulate the fruit. Because there were 108 fruits, every fruit contained unique regulations. If there was resonance, it could then be retrieved. However, the difficulty lay in this resonance. Why could everyone have a sliver of hope of breaking through to the 5th severance just with a fruit? That was because the 108 fruits corresponded to different Tao, and they weren't suitable for everyone. Ling Han stared at the 100 fruits tree. Under his focused stare, he could only see slivers of celestial chi soaring from the fruits, developing into various shapes and forms, and elaborating on the true meaning of the great Tao. He studied it, and discovered this was actually quite useful, allowing him to have a deeper understanding of the foreign realm's regulations. There is really no end to learning, he thought. I thought that I had fused the regulations of the 2 realms, and my grasp of regulations had already reached an absolutely detailed and precise extent, yet I have new discoveries every time. Looks like one really cannot become proud. As time passed, these fruits became more and more amazing. It was as if they had departed from the original shape of fruits, and had really assumed the shapes of various beasts and humans. They flew and roared as they channeled the various techniques through the ages. Right at this moment, the sound of hoofbeats was heard. Everyone turned to look, and as expected, a luxurious carriage was indeed rapidly approaching. Anyone that could manage to steer their carriage here definitely had a powerful background. Otherwise, their transport would not have been able to sustain this kind of pressure at all. The coachman was an astonishingly tall man, a member of the demon race, and the steed was a divine bull. This was an extremely strange matchup. How could a holy beast possibly be involved with a member of the demon race? Look at that sign. Someone suddenly pointed at an emblem on the carriage. It was a sun, dazzling with endless brilliance. Defy, everyone exclaimed simultaneously, their faces showing reverence. What is he here for? That's right. He is already a 5-leaf monarch tier. The 100 fruits tree is not of much use to him, and he is still here to join in on the excitement. Hush, Di Fei is incredible. It is rumored that his natural talent is outstanding, and he has hopes of becoming a monarch star in the future. Don't offend him. I have seen him directly slicing a king tier of the demon race into pieces with a light blade just because the latter took another look at him. It is said that his elder brother, Di Pang, is even stronger. He is already a monarch star. To have 2 monarch tiers from a single clan, that is too extraordinary. The coachman of his carriage is also a king tier of the demon race, who was subdued by Di Fei. Humph, is this meant to provoke our demon race? When I become a monarch tier, I will definitely ask him for a spar. Everyone discussed the newcomer spiritedly. The cultivators of the demon race all showed expressions of wariness and dislike. By nature, they hated the angel race, but Di Fei was too strong. They did not dare express it. As they spoke, the doors to the carriage opened, and a man of lanky build walked out. His wings were white, and the halo above his head was blazingly white, even surpassing his eyes that shone like miniature suns. He was dressed in rich robes, untouched by a speck of dust, yet his feet were bare, and were astonishingly fair. Probably 99% of women would have to admit their inferiority. And what was even more astonishing was that his toenails were actually painted a bright red color. What a sissy. Ling Han immediately tagged this label on Di Fei mentally. However, this person's aura was indeed astonishing. A white lotus flower bloomed on his forehead, bearing 6 petals and 5 leaves, which showed that he was a 5th severance. Di Fei's eyes swept over, and stopped on a woman of the angel race. Instantly, his eyes lit up as he exclaimed, "Fairy Yunhe." He leaped off his carriage, and walked forwards. Fuck off. People were seated in all these circles, and he was not flying over their heads, but rather kicked them directly. Peng, when his words fell, he had sent 3 people who had been blocking his path flying, and the 3 of them spurted blood like mad while they were still in midair. When they landed on the ground, they were already exhaling more than they were inhaling. 5th severance. This was when a monarch tier had the most serious suppression on others in the severing mundane tier. Just like when a dividing soul tier faced a severing mundane tier, it was absolute invincibility. Thus, a mere 2nd severance or 3rd severance would naturally be sent flying with a kick from him. Everyone was furious, especially the masters of those 3 coachmen. They wanted nothing more than to immediately make a move, but when they recalled that they were only at the 4th severance, and it was practically suicide to face a 5th severance, they forcibly suppressed the urge. Di Fei continued onwards. This time, the people that were blocking his way hurriedly stepped aside, fearing that they would be mercilessly sent flying as well. And in this manner, circle after circle of people moved aside, not daring to face his sharpness at all. Di Fei's expression was filled with arrogance. The behavior of the crowds was only a matter of course in his eyes. He strode forwards, only one person in his vision, Fairy Yunhe, a beautiful, delicate flower. Lord Di Fei. Some youths of the angel race approached, appearing like stars gathered around the moon as they surrounded Di Fei. When facing those who were similarly from the angel race, Di Fei's patience was considerably better. He made an exception by nodding at these people. There were a few that still had the aptitude of an emperor tier, and he might be able to take a few of them as his subordinates. He arrived beside Fairy Yunhe, and gazed at her adoringly. He said proudly, "Yunhe, I'll help you pluck the celestial fruit." Yet Fairy Yunhe did not give him much regard, and merely replied calmly, "No need. I can do it myself." Though Di Fei had been rebuffed, he did not show any signs of impatience, and continued, "I naturally know you can, but don't you also want to pluck one for your younger brother?" Fairy Yunhe's aura couldn't help but weaken. She had enough certainty that she could stimulate a celestial fruit, but she had limited energy, after all. She merely cultivated one type of regulations. Thus, she would also only be capable of stimulating a single celestial fruit. Wanting to pluck a second fruit was practically impossible. Yet she doted extremely on her younger brother, and wanted to get a great future for her younger brother as well. Thus, she appeared hesitant now, her rejection no longer so firm. "Since Lord Di Fei is showing such great kindness, it would be better for you to agree, Fairy Yunhe." "That's right. Lord Di has purposely made this trip. His true nature and true love is absolutely sincere and genuine. Those around them began to persuade her. Though some people were saying this, they showed signs of envy. That was because Fairy Yunhe was truly captivatingly beautiful. Chapter 2277, Depressed. Chapter 2277, Depressed. The appearance of the angel race was very close when compared to the people of the celestial realm. The only difference was that they had a pair of wings and a halo above their heads, and their eyes were also extremely bright. However, every single one of them was very fair, the men handsome and the women beautiful. Fairy Yunhe was one of the more well-known ones at that. Whether it was judging via the aesthetics of the angel race or a member of the celestial realm, she was a rarely seen beauty. More importantly, this beauty also possessed astonishing natural talent for cultivation, which naturally caused men to scramble madly over her. Then I will have to thank Brother Di. Fairy Yunhe nodded. She could not refuse this favor, but she had immediately made her decision internally. She would repay him with valuable gifts, and immediately return this kindness. Di-Fei's expression was arrogant. He had already been in the fifth severance for a great many years. Not only had he pushed his main focus, the regulations of light, to an extent of perfection, he had also cultivated another 3 types of regulations, and they had all reached a considerable height as well. In the past, he had already stimulated a fruit using the regulations of light, and the same person using the same regulations would not be able to do it again after using it once. Thus, he would need to use the other 3 regulations, but this naturally would be enough. Even if there were others that had also cultivated the corresponding 3 types of regulations, who would be able to compare to him? He was a 5th severance monarch tier. He talked eloquently, talking about his experiences in recent years and the various types of ancient sites he had visited, which were filled with danger but also innumerable gains, and all who listened were captivated. Even Fairy Yunhe couldn't help but look at him with her beautiful eyes, showing a rapt expression. Firstly, he was eloquent, enchanting any listener, and secondly, he had indeed experienced a considerable number of events that would make others gasp and become fascinated. He became the center of attention, and quite a number of women looked besotted. Di only had to crook his figure, and they would probably immediately jump onto his carriage and roam far and wide with him. These women were from the angel race, and that was one thing, but more importantly, there were a few females of the demon race that were also looking captivated, their eyes bright and intelligent, wanting nothing more than to jump into his arms, and causing the men of both races to go mad with jealousy. But what could they do? Di was a monarch tier, a man that was destined to be capable of becoming an ancestral king, and could even reach the height of 13th or 14th lotus. The admiration of the strong would surpass any differences in race. The fruits are ripe. It was unclear who had called out, but everyone's eyes were immediately focused on the 100 fruits tree, as if Di had instantly lost all his attraction. If compared, what would be more important than their own strength? Di couldn't help but feel displeasure, but thinking further about it, why did he have to be annoyed with a tree? He shook his head, and rose up, intending to immediately stimulate a resonation from the celestial fruit. After all, there were still a great many emperor tiers here, and they were also qualified to stimulate the celestial fruits. If he was too late, the fruit would definitely be snatched. He had only grasped 3 additional regulations. Di channeled the regulation, beginning to stimulate a celestial fruit. In just a short while, he had locked down a celestial fruit. That was a fire element fruit, and was reacting slightly under his power of regulation. Immediately, he tried his best, pouring the entirety of his spirit over. Wang, wang, wang. This fruit trembled slightly. It was shaped like a blazing flame, appearing both beautiful and dangerous. It would allow cultivators who cultivated the regulations of fire to have a sliver of hope of breaking through to the 5th severance, and was incredibly valuable. Come on, Di said mentally. He actually only needed a single fruit to win the favor of Fairy Yunhe. This was a celestial fruit, and even if an 18th Lotus King had planted a restriction here, allowing only severing mundane tiers to come to pluck these fruits, it was still not something that could be done in the blink of an eye. He continuously channeled the regulation, causing the resonance between the two to become stronger and stronger. He couldn't help but look complacent. When he had been in the fourth severance, he had spent 3 days and nights to finally manage to stimulate a celestial fruit, but now he only needed around 2 hours to be able to do the same thing. This speed had increased by who knew how many times over. When 2 hours had passed, that fire element celestial fruit trembled violently, as if it was about to fly off its branch and lunge towards him. Defy smiled slightly. He was close to succeeding. The celestial fruit trembled lightly, and suddenly left the branch, shooting outwards. Yet Defy's expression changed suddenly because this celestial fruit was actually not flying towards him, but rather in a different direction. Impossible. He was inexplicably stunned because it was in the last instant that he had also uncovered that another surge of willpower was invading, and had easily stimulated the celestial fruit, causing the celestial fruit to escape his grasp. This feeling was really very terrible. It was like he had courted a woman for a very long time, and just when it looked like they could finally have S**X, another man suddenly charged out, and stole the woman instead. Defy's eyes followed the course of flight of the celestial fruits, and when his eyes spotted a person, he almost spluttered. That was because that person's hands actually held a pile of celestial fruits, a pile. Was this a fuck monster? Even an emperor tier could only stimulate a single celestial fruit, and this was actually a fuck *** pile. There were at least a few dozen fruits. How did you do that? It was not just him. There were a great many others that were looking at Ling Han like they were looking at a monster. However, the latter had been too focused on stimulating the celestial fruit, and so had not noticed how the others looked like. It was just 2 hours, and this guy had actually stimulated dozens of celestial fruits. What kind of terrifying speed was this? No wonder the other party only had to divert his attention slightly, and managed to snatch the celestial fruit that Defy had been communicating with for a very long time. Defy gritted his teeth, and suppressed the urge to make a move. Instead, he continued to communicate with a second celestial fruit. As he saw it, Ling Han had plucked so many celestial fruits, so he should have exhausted all the regulations that he had grasped. He attempted to stimulate the resonance, and a celestial fruit responded very soon, soothing his unease. He had really feared that the fruits that corresponded to the 3 types of regulations he had grasped would already have been taken by others. However, the tragedy repeated. A forceful divine sense swept over, and the fruit that he had been communicating with instantly departed from its branch. Defy did not even have to turn his head. Just looking at the course of flight of this fruit, he could be sure that it had surely been that person. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! What fruit can't you pick? Why must you contend with me? Moreover, you have already plucked so many, so why are you still so greedy? He immediately wanted to make a move, but recalling that he still had another regulation that he had not channeled, he suppressed his fury. Instead, he channeled his last regulation, and then he immediately discovered that there was no fruit that resonated with him. The 100 fruits tree had 108 fruits that corresponded to 108 different regulations of the Great Tao, but in truth, the total was not such a great number. Furthermore, many of them were split out from a main branch of Great Tao, such as the regulations of fire that had split out into 9 Tao, and totaled 9 fruits. The regulations everyone cultivated would ultimately have an affinity with one fruit, and whether one could stimulate it or otherwise would have to depend on the extent of affinity and on the depth of their grasp of the regulations. This time, Defy had not stimulated any fruit, which meant one thing, and that was the fruits that corresponded to his regulations had already been completely harvested. Only one person could have done it so quickly. Ling Han, you've gone too far. Defy suddenly stood, and shouted loudly at Ling Han, hand over all the fruits, and scram off the mountain. That's right, hand them over. The others called out as well. If Ling Han alone got close to 60 fruits, then what would be left for them? Chapter 2278, I have considered. Chapter 2278, I have considered. Ling Han's eyes swept over them, but he merely smiled faintly. Why should I? The women indeed could not use as many as over 60 celestial fruits, But this object could grant others a sliver of hope of breaking through to the fifth severance. If left in the foreign realm, wouldn't that cause trouble for the celestial realm? Hence, even if he discarded them, he would not leave them for the foreign realm. Moreover, eating one would only give a sliver of hope, so wouldn't eating a few more mean an even higher chance? To say nothing of over 60 fruits, even if all 108 fruits were given to him, Ling Han would not complain. If you don't, you die. Defy declared harshly, the white lotus flower on his forehead glowing, appearing both sacred and dazzling. The angel race and demon race were not on good terms in the first place. If there had been a shared target, they would have long since battled to death, but if it was contending over profit, they would still be battering each other. Die, the others called out as well. It was not just the angel race, but also the demon race that was calling out. When on the issue of profit, whatever race or justice was all superficial. Ling Han chuckled, and retorted, there are a great many people who want to kill me. As for you guys, hehe, you are too far off. These words were really not any kind of exaggeration. The heavenly venerates of both realms were hunting Ling Han, but wasn't he still alive and kicking very well? Furthermore, he would become stronger and stronger, and then would become a heavenly venerate in the future, or even surpass the heavenly venerable tier, and beat down on the sealed emotion heavenly venerable and the others. Defy naturally would not believe it. The fact that Ling Han managed to come here meant that the other was only a severing mundane tier, then there was absolutely no way Defy himself, a fifth severance monarch tier, would not be the other party's match. To say the least, even if the other man was also a fifth severance monarch tier, Defy was certain that he himself would still be slightly superior. You are courting death. Defy moved aggressively, and an incredibly bright, extremely dazzling light surged out, turning into a sword that sliced out at Ling Han. Though Ling Han had already had some exchanges with the cultivators of the foreign realm, he had only touched the regulation of darkness. Thus, seeing this monarch tier of the angel race, he couldn't help but feel some interest. He wanted to see just how amazing this regulation of light was. Hence, he did not use any kind of power, and carelessly moved to play around with Defy. At present, Ling Han was really too strong. Though the overall level of the celestial realm was inferior to the foreign realms, it still had its value. Its regulations still contained what the regulations of the foreign realm did not. To complete both was the wisest option. If Ling Han returned to the immortal palace tier, he would no longer be a monarch star, but rather an existence that had surpassed a monarch star, and could be called something like monarch moon, monarch sun, or something like that. Anyways, he would be all-powerful, so he would be beyond awesome. Defy burst out with celestial might, channeling the regulations of light. It was as if he had become a war god of light, completely beating down on Ling Han. His expression was filled with arrogance. As expected, he was the strongest monarch tier. There was absolutely no way that Ling Han could be his match. However, for some unknown reason, the latter was incredibly strange, and had actually grasped innumerable regulations, plucking as many as over 60 celestial fruits. Yet as time passed, Defy was slightly anxious because no matter how big his advantage was, he could not suppress Ling Han and obtain victory at all. Why is this guy so tough? Defy thought, but surmised that Ling Han should also be a monarch tier, so it was logical that he had not immediately defeated him. Others were also stunned. They had not imagined that Ling Han was so strong, and was actually also a monarch tier as well. Furthermore, the young man that had guided Ling Han previously was also gaping with shock. And to think he had actually told Ling Han not to have any extravagant hopes. He had not thought that the latter would be this powerful. Great blade of light, killing all evils. Defy roared loudly, suddenly brandishing a precious blade. It was blazing white, as if it was formed from pure light, and was extremely amazing. Brandishing the sword, he slashed out at Ling Han. Shio, light burst, causing people to become blind even when they had their eyes open. A strange feeling rose up in Ling Han. It was like innumerable beautiful celestial maidens were waving him over, as if he would willingly surrender to death, and from then onwards, he could soar into a plane of nirvana, where there would be no more worries. There would be no more battles, and only pleasure. Immediately, His eyes snapped open, bursting with an astonishing chill. This regulation of light had the effect of enchantment. The light of the blade descended, yet Ling Han grabbed it with a single stroke. With a slight tremor, he had immediately snatched the sword of light. He discovered that this material was extremely unique. It actually had no solid form, but rather was fused from pure regulations. A unique method of tool refinement, Ling Han thought. He raised his head, and saw those around him were all gaping, their mouths so wide that they could fit an egg. The others were naturally astounded. "Fuck, is there anyone like you? Just now, you looked like you were outmatched, but with just a careless grab, you even plucked the weapon of your opponent. Can't you see that Defy is looking absolutely stunned now?" Ling Han chuckled, and said, "Sorry for scaring everyone. Those who said you wanted to kill me, take one step forward. It's time for accounting." Sure, at least 90% of them all simultaneously took a step back, and a few people whose reaction was slightly slower immediately stood out. "No, not me." One of them saw this, and rapidly shook his head, defending himself as he pointed at himself. The others were much smarter, and hurriedly stepped back. Defy suppressed his fury, and said, "Sell one of your fruits to me. Name your price." He had agreed to produce a celestial fruit for Fairy Yunhe, yet now it was definite that he was unable to pluck it himself, so he could only choose to buy it from Ling Han. Others would definitely be unwilling to sell as they only had one. Ling Han was shocked, and asked, "Weren't you planning to kill me?" Defy avoided the question. If he could kill Ling Han, he naturally would not be wasting words, but who asked that he could not? He humphed, and repeated, "Name your price." Ling Han shook his head, and said, "I have a better idea. Why don't I kill you? Wouldn't everything you possess all belong to me then?" Haha. Defy laughed arrogantly. Who was he? A monarch tier, and his elder brother was a monarch star, someone destined to become an 18th Lotus Supreme Elite. Who would dare to kill him? Woo! His laughter silenced abruptly because his neck was already gripped by Ling Han, and he was lifted off his feet. He had supreme great power, but in Ling Han's grasp, he was like a harmless chick, losing all power. He couldn't help but feel astonished. Just how wide exactly was the difference between himself and Ling Han for the former to actually be unable to sustain a single blow like this? Seeing the menacing killing intent that Ling Han exuded, Fairy Yunhe spoke up. "Sir, please have mercy. Defy's brother is a monarch star, and now his cultivation level is the 9th level of 8th Lotus, possessing invincible might." Ling Han broke into a smile, and demanded, "So I should just suffer in silence, and allow this brat to trample all over me? Why must you act on impulse?" Fairy Yunhe persuaded. It was not that she held any kind of affection for Defy, but rather that she was very wary of Defy. He was a true prodigy, and it was said that even a great many ancestral kings had extended an olive branch to him, wanting to take him as a disciple. "Then I'll consider," Ling Han said thus, and in the blink of an eye, he spoke again. "All right, I have considered." "You call that considering?" Fairy Yunhe couldn't help but feel torn between laughter and tears, feeling that though this person was of the demon race, he did not have a sliver of the malice of the demon race, but was closer to being a shameless ruffian. "Then what is the outcome of your consideration?" she asked patiently. "Kill him, of course." Ling Han smiled slightly, showing a mouthful of snow-white teeth. With a twist of his right hand, Defy's neck was broken, and all life was immediately wiped from him. Now, the world is finally silent. He efficiently found the spatial god tool on Defy, then casually tossed him aside. Turning to look at the masses. "What do you guys think?" Chapter 2279, Proposal. Chapter 2279, Proposal. It really was silent because not only had Defy died, no longer able to make the slightest sound, even the others were all dumbfounded, and could not say a single word. Monarch Tier, Defy's younger brother at that, had actually died just like that. This was the monarch tier that they strained, struggled, and were so determined to become. So what if they did? If it was still the fate of being insta-killed with a single strike that awaited them, then what meaning would there be to diligently and tirelessly aspire for it? Ling Han chuckled and said, "Please continue. I'll take my leave." He had already used all the evolutions of regulations he had, and obtaining over 60 celestial fruits was his limit. Furthermore, he had always been a more low-key character, and had not planned to rob the others. After all, he was still in the foreign realm, though there was already a monarch tier that had died by his hand, who asked the former to have offended him. "Wait!" Celestial Maiden Yunhe hurriedly called out. Bearing a dazzling smile, it was as if she had completely forgotten about the matter of defy. "Could you sell me a celestial fruit?" "No." Ling Han answered very decisively. Celestial Maiden Yunhe was slightly suffocated. Not only did she have astonishing natural talent in cultivation, she was also an outstanding beauty herself. With Ling Han refusing her so decisively and resolutely, she felt irritated, and gained an urge to bite Ling Han. Forcing out a smile, she said, "Sir, I can give you a referral to enroll into the 100 Battles Academy. With your natural talent, you would definitely be able to stand out in a short period of time, and become a dazzling star that has newly risen. How about it?" Though the 100 Battles Academy was established only by a 10th Lotus ancestral king, it is linked in countless ways to various ancestral kings behind the scenes. It is not impossible to become the disciple of a 17th Lotus, or even an 18th Lotus ancestral king in future. Ling Han's first reaction was to refuse, of course. His grasp of the regulations of the foreign realm was still extremely weak, and his disguise could only be effective on severing mundane tiers. If a celestial king really set eyes on him, he would definitely be exposed. However, on second thought, celestial king tier forces would definitely have stronger time cultivation chambers. Furthermore, a heavenly venerate was presently looking for him, and he could just boldly hide in an academy, and who knew, the effects of his disguise could be even better. Of course, before this, he definitely had to successfully modify the heaven-deceiving technique so that it could also be effective in the foreign realm. For him, this was not very difficult to do, because he had the Origin Magic Cube, which allowed him to very easily assimilate the regulations of the two realms. Of course, this needed time. Moreover, he was indeed very intrigued by the cultivation system of the foreign realm. The deeper and more detailed his understanding of the enemy, the better, and naturally the higher the chances of defeating them. "All right." Ling Han nodded. He casually took out a celestial fruit, and was just about to toss it over. "Please give me a lightning element celestial fruit." Celestial Maiden Yunhe was overjoyed, and hurriedly added more details to her request. If the elemental alignment was incorrect, it would not be of much use even if her brother consumed it. Ling Han picked through his harvest, and threw another one over, asking, "When do we set out?" "Fave to first retrieve a celestial fruit. Thus, please wait a few days for me, sir," Celestial Maiden Yunhe said smilingly. "There is fine wine and rare fruits in my carriage. Please go in, sit anywhere and take a rest, sir." "All right," Ling Han agreed hesitantly. Yet everyone almost exploded in fury. This was an invitation from Celestial Maiden Yunhe, allowing him to enter into her personal domain. What man would not be overwhelmed with joy? Yet Ling Han actually had such a sour face. How could this not be infuriating? Ling Han climbed aboard the carriage. As expected, the inside was very spacious. There were chairs and a soft couch, while various rare and strange fruits were laid out on the tea table. Without reservations, he lay down on the soft couch as he plucked a grape, which he tossed into his mouth. Not bad, the fruit was extremely sweet, juicy, and thirst-quenching. There was also a sliver of regulations that circulated inside his body, which was extremely beneficial for cultivation. This wait took another 3 days and nights, and only then did he see Celestial Maiden Yunhe board the carriage. At first, she was smiling gently, but when she saw how Ling Han was presently lying on her personal couch, her pretty face immediately darkened. This damn man was really utterly shameless to actually dare to dirty her couch. Who had given him that courage? Scram! She couldn't help but exclaim angrily, she was a bit of a clean freak. Ling Han did not move, and retorted, "Didn't you say I could sit anywhere? Then you should have some minimal self-awareness, at least. Could you just simply sit or lie on the personal couch of a lady? Don't you think this is rather ungentlemanly?" Celestial Maiden Yunhe asked, trying her best to calm down, and speaking reason with Ling Han. Ling Han laughed, and said, with such a genial invitation from the Celestial Maiden, if I acted reserved with you, wouldn't that be a rebuff to you? As he spoke, he grabbed an apple, and bit crisply into it. Celestial Maiden Yunhe gritted her teeth in fury. This guy was really a ruffian, and was extremely thick-skinned as well. This kind of person was the hardest to deal with. She ignored Ling Han, and sat on the chair at the side, calling out loudly, "Set out." Long Tu, who was outside, shivered, and hurriedly obeyed. With him raising the whip to urge the horse, the steed immediately galloped onwards. Ling Han spoke no further. He had not spent the last 3 days idly. Instead, he was refining the heaven-deceiving technique, but he still needed a little more time to succeed. He did not speak any more nonsense with Celestial Maiden Yunhe, but rather focused completely on studying the heaven-deceiving technique. The carriage was slightly swaying, but it caused no effect at all. Ling Han just simply sat quietly by himself, just like an old monk. Celestial Maiden Yunhe looked at him, feeling more and more discomfort in her heart. She naturally had no shortage of courtesan fact. There were so many that she was no longer concerned, but when she saw how a man ignored her completely, an intense fury rose up in her heart. This man. Why didn't he just die? In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed, and the carriage finally stopped swaying, arriving at an old town. This was not the location of Celestial Maiden Yunhe's clan, but rather a neutral zone, where there was neither any regulation of darkness nor any regulations of light, so no harm would be caused to Ling Han. She had Ling Han stay here for the moment, while she would continue her journey onwards to her clan. When she handed a celestial fruit to her younger brother, and she herself had broken through to the 5th severance, she would come back and find Ling Han, and they would head towards the 100 Battles Academy together. Ling Han had no disagreement. He found a place, and settled down there while continuing to use the local time cultivation chamber to complete the heaven-deceiving technique as quickly as possible. He asked Small Tower, "I still have a large amount of starstones from the celestial realm with me. Can you recharge using them?" Small Tower shook its head. "No. The power I need has already surpassed the range of 9th heaven. However, this can be used on the reincarnation tree. The level of heavenly venerable tier was too high, surpassing regulations itself. Thus, the starstones could not be of any help to Small Tower, but the reincarnation tree was still in the category of normal, and the starstones could still be effective on it. Why hadn't you said so earlier?" Ling Han almost jumped in fury. What was needed the most to modify the heaven-deceiving technique was time for comprehension, and it was precisely what the reincarnation tree could help him with. Furthermore, the women also needed the reincarnation tree for cultivation. "You haven't asked, either," Small Tower said, but followed up with an explanation. "My power is limited. It is best for me to constantly stay dormant. As expected of a proud demon tower that liked to speak tough." It was clearly something that could have been resolved if it had taken the initiative to just explain, yet it still wanted to irritate Ling Han. Ling Han, on the other hand, very much wanted to see the karmic life heavenly venerable. Just what kind of person was he that he could actually create such a precious tool like Small Tower? And there was also the lane. It must have had some very profound relations with the karmic life heavenly venerable. Based on these two aspects, the karmic life heavenly venerable probably was not a serious person, either. TL first boost the grade of the Divine Demon Sword. Chapter 2280, The Divine Demon Sword is upgraded. Chapter 2280, The Divine Demon Sword is upgraded. When Ling Han had been in the Celestial Realm, he had killed over 100 foreign realm celestial kings through trickery in one fell swoop, obtaining astonishingly great military merits, and he had also redeemed uncountable godly metal from the heavens, which would be sufficient to push the devouring metal to the level of divine metal. Previously, when he had fled into the foreign realm, he had not managed to pay attention to the Divine Demon Sword. Furthermore, it had not been very urgent, either, and now that he had found some time, he finally recalled that it was time to upgrade this divine sword to the grade that it should have. Because there was really too much godly metal piled together, It was even larger than a planet. Thus, Ling Han was boosting the divine demon sword inside the Black Tower. Otherwise, if he had taken out so much godly metal, he really would have had to abandon this neutral zone as well. Even if the devouring ability of the divine demon sword was astonishing, it was still after 10 days' time that it finally advanced to 9 stars. Then, another 20 days later, it was at the level of pseudo-divine metal. After reaching this stage, the divine demon sword was already close to satiation. Only another step further, and it could become divine demon sword. However, Ling Han fed this sword another 3 days, but this guy was not willing to consume any further. There was clearly still a considerable amount of godly metal left. Ling Han paused for a moment, and suddenly it came to him. Could it be that the divine demon sword could only completely break through in a true heaven and earth? He exited the Black Tower, and the divine demon sword instantly shone with majestic light. Multiple seals flickered on the blade, possessing an indescribable might. Boom! Dark clouds immediately rolled out in the skies as lightning flashed closely together. The heavenly tribulation was coming, but its target this time was not Ling Han, but rather the sword in his hands. Ling Han laughed loudly, his figure flying into the air, and leaving this town behind, and arrived at the isolated outskirts. Kwong, the first bolt of lightning had already descended, incredibly accurately striking onto the divine demon sword. Ling Han raised the sword to greet the lightning bolt. With a swipe of the sword, this bolt of lightning was instantly slashed into half. However, Ling Han was also completely numb from electrocution, even if he had just been scraped a bit. The divine demon sword was going to be promoted to become a celestial tool, so the divine punishment it endured was also at the celestial king tier. This was a power that Ling Han was far from being capable of matching. Gods! Ling Han thought. This heavenly tribulation was too frightening. Merely a single wave of the aftermath, and he was in such a great pain. The upcoming might of the heavenly tribulation would be further increased gradually. How was he supposed to hold up to it? Right at this moment, the divine demon's sword trembled slightly, suddenly leaving Ling Han's hands. Shio! It shot straight into the air. It had actually taken the initiative to face the heavenly tribulation head-on. Ling Han thought for a while. Unless he used the Black Tower, there was no way he could interfere. If that was the case, then forget it. This was a threshold that the divine demon sword had to breach. If it could not succeed, it would not be qualified to become divine metal. Boom, boom, boom. The heavenly tribulation threw down bolt after bolt of lightning, and crack after crack also appeared on the divine demon sword, as if it was no longer able to endure. You can do it, Ling Han thought. The divine demon sword had been by his side for so many years, and his martial intent was contained within. Though it was presently still very weak, it had inherited Ling Han's conviction: never give up, and never talk of retreat. The battle prowess of the divine demon sword itself was completely insufficient to match the heavenly tribulation. It was being tempered by the lightning. It was all up to it whether it would be shattered to bits or complete the leap in quality, and become divine metal. The heavenly tribulation of the foreign realm was even fiercer. Though Ling Han had confidence in the divine demon sword, it was inevitable that he still felt a sliver of worry. Shio! A figure shot over and arrived. It was a handsome young man, a member of the angel race. His snow-white wings were incredibly pure and holy, and he bore long locks of dazzling gold, looking handsome to the point of arousing the jealousy of others. What good luck! An ultimate precious divine sword is actually enduring a heavenly tribulation now. Is this a gift that the heavens has bestowed on me, Richina? This young man laughed loudly. He had deliberately come to investigate when he had seen the terrifying lightning spread out into an ocean over here. At first, he had thought that it was a 9th Lotus elite about to become an ancestral king. He had not thought that it was actually a sword. This is an ancestral weapon. He was incredibly excited. An ancestral weapon was the equivalent of the celestial tool of the celestial tool, and though the overall level of the foreign realm was just that bit higher than the celestial king tier, there was still an incredibly small number of ancestral weapons. And now, an ancestral weapon had actually appeared in front of him, with no owner at that. Naturally, he thought that this was a gift that the heavens had bestowed upon him. As for Ling Han, he was a mere sixth lotus, so the man naturally overlooked him completely. His eyes set on Ling Han, and he felt that there seemed to be something hidden within Ling Han that made him feel a discomfort he could not describe. Commit suicide, Richina stated calmly. He disliked the feeling that he got from Ling Han, but couldn't be bothered to investigate the matter. It would be fine once he was dead. Ling Han looked at him. This was a seventh lotus 3 leaves powerhouse, which was the equivalent of the earth soul of the dividing soul tier. No wonder he dared to cast such disdain on him, and he was also grim. As expected, if it was just a simple disguise, it would be hard for Ling Han to deceive even an earth soul. That disgusted expression on the other's face was the exact same expression he wore when he saw the people who cultivated the techniques of the foreign realm in the celestial realm. This kind of despise came from the heaven and earth. It was just dislike, and there was no reason for it. Commit suicide. The difficulty is quite high. I really don't know how, Ling Han said smilingly. Why don't you demonstrate first? Richina was stunned. He had entirely thought that Ling Han would immediately wail and beg for mercy. He had not thought that the latter would actually talk back to him. His courage was really quite great. If it were not for the fact that you are too unlikable, I could take you as my subordinate. It is most interesting to make a defiant person submit, he said calmly. Unfortunately, I am not in the mood for that at all right now. He suddenly moved, launching an attack at Ling Han. This was a battle that had absolutely no reason for it, but since the other party was charging straight at him, Ling Han naturally would not just wait for death to arrive, either. He dodged this strike immediately with a flash. He did not know who this young man was, and did not want to cause unnecessary trouble. After all, he wanted to keep a low profile. In these several thousand years, Ling Han had already completely grasped the regulations of the foreign realm. At least it was the case for severing mundane tier regulations. He manifested millions of himself. This was a weaker version of void space, but could also be considered a stronger version. It was weaker because his present cultivation level was too low, so it was definitely inferior compared to when he used it as a second secret immortal palace tier, but it could be called stronger because it had assimilated the regulations of 2 realms, so that void space, at the level of severing mundane tier, had become stronger. How intriguing. You actually managed to dodge my strike, but that would only happen once, Richina declared with a laugh, yet was completely unconcerned. In the first place, there was a massive gulf between the severing mundane tier and dividing soul tier, what more when he was a 7th lotus 3 leaves. He moved once more, his fingers turning into endless blades that shot rapidly towards Ling Han. Ling Han could definitely not be considered good-tempered. Just now, he had just reminded himself that he had to keep a low profile, but seeing how overbearing Richina was being, his fury instantly went straight to his head. How could he hold back any further? Clenching a fist, he countered Richina with a blow of his own. You are overestimating yourself, Richina sneered. As he saw it, this action from Ling Han was naturally like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, a useless act of resistance in the face of absolute despair. Peng! With this strike, Richina was immediately sent stumbling back continuously, and that was the same for Ling Han as well. Richina's expression instantly changed. His opponent had actually managed to battle him to a tie. It should be known that he was a 7th lotus 3 leaves, and a king tier at that. Even if the other party was a 6th lotus 5 leaves monarch tier, his battle prowess would only be at the 7th lotus 2 leaves at most. How could he possibly match him? Moreover, there was a strange aura seeping from his body, causing him to involuntarily feel dislike and an even stronger impulse to commit murder. Chapter 2281 Another Scroll. Chapter 2281 Another Scroll. You must possess some kind of precious treasure. Richina set his eyes on Ling Han. Otherwise, there is no way that a 6th lotus 5 leaves can match me. Ling Han shrugged, and retorted, You are only amazed because of your ignorance. You have obtained the treasure of an ancestral king, right? A covetous expression flashed across Richina's face. Otherwise, an ancestral weapon that was presently enduring a heavenly tribulation and a youth that possessed battle prowess that surpassed ordinary standards were both illogical. But the power of an ancestral king was boundless. Who knew, they could allow a cultivator to possess battle prowess that was above average standards. All this is mine. Richina charged over. In the first place, the angel race and demon race could not be considered to be on friendly terms at all, so it was absolutely normal for conflicts and fights to break out between them. Ling Han humphed lightly. His killing intent was also rippling. He moved decisively, harsh and ruthless. As for keeping a low profile, he did not know the meaning of the concept at all. Boom, boom, boom. The two of them battled fiercely. If Ling Han could burst out with his full power, killing this opponent would naturally be completely effortless, but he could only channel foreign realm regulations at present, so his battle prowess was restricted to 7th Lotus 3 Leaves, which was on equal terms with Rishina's power. Thus, though the two of them were fighting intensely, it was hard to decide the victor for the moment. Sacred light illuminates, favoring all realms. Richina roared loudly, suddenly bursting out with a powerful move. Immediately, an endless power of light surged out. It was as if the whole world had become a realm of light, bringing warmth and great comfort. However, Richina charged out of this sacred light, wanting to take the chance to land a fatal blow. Ling Han's willpower was extremely firm. The attack could not cause the slightest bit of effect on him at all. He merely shot out a punch, bearing the aged air of time. He had used the regulations of time, causing Rishina's punch to become extraordinarily slow. Damn it! Richina shouted loudly, bursting out with the regulations of light to the maximum. Instantly, the regulations of time were expelled, and his speed spiked in a flash. The regulations of time were superior to other regulations only when compared between equals, but Rishina's cultivation level was far above Ling Han's. A full burst of the regulations of light from him naturally could contend with the regulations of time, yet also caused him to expend a lot of power. He panted harshly, feeling that there was only less than half spiritual power left in his body. If this went on, he would be in danger of expending all power. This was too frightening. A mere 6th Lotus cultivator had actually worn out a 7th Lotus cultivator completely. He did not dare to attack rashly any longer, but rather chose to focus on defending, saving on power as he waited for the divine demon sword to finish enduring the heavenly tribulation. As long as he could snatch this ancestral weapon, wouldn't killing Ling Han be merely child's play? This was a viable strategy. No matter how freakish Ling Han was, there was still a major tears difference between them, so Ling Han could only restrain Richina, yet could not cause him any severe injury. If this scene was witnessed by others, they would all definitely be extremely stunned. This had definitely broken the ironclad rules of the cultivation world. After about a day, the thunderclouds in the skies suddenly withdrew. Wang, the divine demon's sword, burst out with extraordinary light, more and more cracks appearing on the blade. Suddenly, it shattered, countless bits of metal falling down. Then, a new sword was seen, pointing straight at the skies, as if it was capable of easily ripping a hole into the dome of heaven. The divine demon sword's upgrade was complete. It was now a celestial tool. Ha 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 ha. Richina laughed loudly, and suddenly flew up, grabbing out at the divine demon sword. This is mine. He had been waiting for precisely this moment, and this pounce from him was indeed faster than Ling Han could move. Ling Han did not move to stop Richina, either, and allowed him to grab hold of the divine demon sword. Surrender your life. Richina brandished the sword in attack. Even if he could not activate the ancestral weapon, an ancestral weapon could crush all life merely in terms of sharpness. What could it not rip through with a single strike? The blade approached, and together with Rishina's elegant demeanor, he was like a descending deity. Ling Han merely smiled, and said, "Sword, come." Xiao, Richina only felt his right hand tremble, and the ancestral weapon actually flew out of his grip. What? He mouthed this word with an indescribable shock on his face. This was an ancestral weapon. There was absolutely no way that it would recognize a 6th Lotus cultivator as its master. Not even a 9th Lotus would be recognized. Furthermore, without attaining the level of ancestral king, one would not be able to activate an ancestral weapon. Thus, Richina was extremely certain that he only had to grab the ancestral weapon, and that would spell victory for him. He had never imagined that Ling Han could actually control the ancestral weapon. This was practically unbelievable. He involuntarily shuddered. If the ancestral weapon showed its might, even if there were 100 million of him, that would not be enough to handle an ancestral weapon. Ling Han broke into a grin, and said, "Don't be nervous. This is not an ancestral weapon. It is just that the sword itself has reached the level of ancestral weapons. Celestial tools and weapons that were forged from divine metal were completely two different things, but in ordinary circumstances, even celestial kings could only obtain divine metal with very great difficulty. Naturally, they were all forged into celestial tools. Actually, this was another concept." Rishina's heart calmed slightly, but he still felt a terror that could not be described. Though this was not an ancestral weapon, it was the same in terms of sharpness. There was no need for a direct strike, merely a flash of sword chi would be extremely terrifying, and would be enough to rip him into pieces. Finishing this thought, he suddenly turned and fled, no longer thinking of this ancestral weapon at least for the moment. Ling Han used void space, and rapidly pursued him. Laughing, he said, "We haven't played enough, so why are you leaving in such a hurry?" Richina did not answer, and merely ran swiftly, yet his speed could not be compared to Ling Han's, and he was very quickly caught up with. A cold light shot towards him, causing all his hair to stand on ends. He hurriedly turned around, and countered with a punch. Spiritual power condensed into regulations, turning into a divine fist of light that shot out at Ling Han. He did not ask to wound his enemy, and only hoped that this blow could delay Ling Han for a while so he could have some time to flee. Shua, the sword chi shot out from the divine demon's sword surged past, and that divine fist of light was immediately divided into two. The sword chi did not slow in the slightest, continuing to slice onwards. With a pu, Richina was already slashed in two, and died a quick death. Ling Han was also dumbfounded. It should be known that there was actually not much difference in strength between himself and Richina, but with just the addition of a sword, he now had the ability to insta-kill the latter. But upon further thought, it was logical. If the divine demon sword was really a celestial tool, then Ling Han would be able to easily kill even an ascending origin tier, and though now the overall level of regulations had not reached that level, it was forged from divine metal, after all. If it did not have great might, what right would it have to claim the label of a celestial tool? Ling Han shook his head, and walked over to rummage through Rishina's robes. Since the latter was already dead, there was no need for him to be reserved. "Huh!" Ling Han released a surprised exclamation. Richina naturally possessed a spatial god tool, but he actually hid a scroll on himself, and had not stowed it away into the spatial god tool. At first, Ling Han thought that this was a decree, and wondered why that guy had not used it before. However, he soon discovered it was not, because he could not unfurl this scroll. Furthermore, he, too, could not store it away into the Black Tower or his own spatial god tool. This. Ling Han took out another scroll. He had obtained it from a den of mountain bandits after he had just entered into the celestial realm, because he could not unfurl it or stow it away into the Black Tower. He thought that it was something amazing, and thus constantly kept it on himself. But in truth, this thing was really completely useless. And now, he had actually seen a second scroll in the foreign realm. The fact that it had appeared in a den of mountain bandits, and was also found on a seventh lotus cultivator, seemed to imply that this thing was worthless, but it could not be stowed into even the Black Tower, so could it really be something ordinary? Strange, just what exactly is this thing? Ling Han's hands held a scroll each. In the past, he only had one useless item, yet now he had two. Fine, he was becoming a chicken. Chapter 2282, BA. Chapter 2282, BA. In the past, limited by his strength, Ling Han had not done many experiments on the first scroll, and he had gradually forgotten about it afterwards. Now that he had set eyes on it once more, his curiosity could no longer be restrained. He stabbed it with the divine demon sword. When the tip of the blade touched the scroll, Wang, an astonishing light surged out, and his hand became numb. The divine demon sword almost flew out of his hand. He was stunned. This scroll was really quite incredible. It could even match the sharpness of a celestial tool. He scratched his head in exasperation. Just how exactly was he supposed to unfurl this scroll? He was really too curious. Ling Han thought for a very long time, but he still stowed the 2 scrolls into his robes in the end. If he didn't touch this thing, it would be no different from any ordinary paper. He could not sense anything special about it at all. Till think about it in the future. First, I have to modify the heaven-deceiving technique. He entered the Black Tower, and comprehended Tao underneath the reincarnation tree. The women had long since started to do this, and the price for it was a great expense in starstones. However, they had many starstones anyways, so there was no need for them to worry about the danger of spending all their starstones for the moment. After spending 1,000,000 years underneath the reincarnation tree, Ling Han had finally successfully completed the modification of the heaven-deceiving technique. Of course, he had borrowed the help of the origin magic cube. Otherwise, he could not reach that height in terms of regulations. He taught the modified heaven-deceiving technique to the women. After they had successfully learned it, to say nothing of deceiving celestial kings, deceiving ascending origin tiers at least should be no issue. The women continued their cultivation, while Ling Han returned to town. Celestial maiden Yunhe had already waited many days for him, but she was not here at present. Instead, Long Tu was waiting here for him. "Greetings, my lord." When he spotted Ling Han, Long Tu immediately paid his respects. He knew that Ling Han was a monarch tier. There was a need to be respectful towards such an existence. Seeing a member of the foreign realm greet him, his expression respectful, Ling Han felt an indescribable strangeness, yet showed nothing on his expression. He nodded slightly, and asked, "Has your master broken through to the 5th leaf?" "Yes." Long Tu immediately stood upright again. This was the 5th leaf. From now, she had advanced into the ranks of monarch tiers, and it was destined that she would eventually become an ancestral king. Following this kind of master was naturally an honor as well. Ling Han smiled. She was just a monarch star. He had killed who knew how many of them, and even a considerable number of monarch stars had died by his hand. He asked, "Where is your master?" "Our celestial maiden has waited many days." "Please follow me, my lord," Long Tu said respectfully. In a small wood outside the town, a lavish carriage was standing by beside the road, and there were over a dozen people chatting and sipping tea around the carriage. Like the moon being surrounded by the stars, celestial maiden Yunhe accepted the flattery of those around her while she responded with a cordial smile, appearing very calm and relaxed. These people were all members of the angel race, all of them being handsome men and beautiful women. They presented a feast for the eyes. "Celestial maiden, that person is really putting on airs too much, actually forcing you to wait for so many days," someone exclaimed in displeasure. "That's right. Just who does he think our celestial maiden Yunhe is? He really should not have done so." Even if celestial maiden has a kind heart, and is not willing to speak up, we are still determined to seek justice for you. Everyone chatted spiritedly, trying their best to degrade Ling Han. They were naturally jealous because they knew that if it were them that had been late for so many days, there would be absolutely no way that celestial maiden Yunhe would be waiting for them. Celestial maiden Yunhe only smiled faintly, a hint of pride on her face. By now, she had advanced to the 5th severance, and this was precisely a moment when her spirits were the highest. She thought that the distance between herself and Ling Han had already shrunk endlessly, and she might in fact have surpassed him by now. True, Defy had indeed died by Ling Han's hand, but there were still differences in strength among 5th severance monarch tiers. At present, she felt that she was extremely strong, and completely had the strength that Ling Han possessed. To advance from the 4th severance to 5th severance was equivalent to breaching the gap between the 4th severance and dividing soul tier. This distance was naturally astonishing, and it was no wonder that she had such a high opinion of herself now. At present, she really wanted to have a spar with Ling Han. Right at this moment, Long Tu was seen leading someone here. What, a demon race? When everyone saw this, they all showed expressions of dislike and disdain. What member of the angel race did not hate the demon race? The power of darkness and light that both cultivated were natural enemies, and just barely maintaining peaceful relations was only possible under the pressure of the heavenly venerates. They had never imagined that the person that celestial maiden Yunhe had been patiently waiting for was actually a member of the demon race. Celestial maiden Yunhe nodded. He is indeed a member of the demon race. Just when she was about to introduce Ling Han, she suddenly realized that her knowledge of Ling Han was practically zero. In fact, she didn't even know his name. Forgot to ask your name, she asked Ling Han. Ling Han thought, and then said, my name is B.A. When everyone heard this, they were all gritting their teeth. This guy was really shameless. To actually call himself B.A. There were some names that one could not give himself on a whim. For example, you could not simply call yourself Sword King, Sword Emperor, or something like that. Otherwise, there would definitely be swordsmen coming to challenge you. The name B.A. was an even greater mockery of the masses. Anyone who heard it would be displeased. B.A., right? Do you dare accept a spar? Someone issued a challenge towards Ling Han. Ling Han broke into a grin. Sure. However, everyone that has fought with me would mysteriously end up calling me father. Everyone was at a loss at first before realization dawned on them. If they ended up shivering from being beaten down on, and kept calling B.A., B.A., wouldn't it be calling him father? Why did this guy have such a mean tongue? From the very beginning, he was offending others. Zijian, stop. Celestial maiden Yunhe hurriedly tried to stop him. This challenger was only a 4th Severance King tier. When against Ling Han, he was practically delivering himself up to be defeated. Furthermore, Ling Han dared to kill even Defy, so was there anyone else he did not dare kill? That challenger was naturally not convinced. In front of his goddess, how could he possibly cower? He humphed, and said, Celestial maiden, don't worry. I will observe propriety in my attacks. Xiao, he quickly charged out in attack without waiting for any further words from Celestial maiden Yunhe. Everyone felt their vision blur, and the next thing they saw was that Ling Han had gripped the challenger by his neck. Ling Han slightly released the killing intent in his body, and the challenger instantly shuddered harshly, saying shakily, B.A., 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 B.A. In everyone's ears, it did indeed sound like he was calling Ling Han father. This guy was really too mean to actually give himself such a name. Celestial maiden Yunhe stepped out, and said, Brother B.A., I shall battle with you. Ling Han's enthusiasm waned. He had defeated even a 7th Lotus 3 Leaves King tier, so how could he possibly be interested to spar with a 6th Lotus Monarch tier? He merely yawned, tossed the challenger casually to the side, and said, all right, I'll exchange a few moves with you. Everyone was extremely angered. Ling Han was clearly a severing mundane tier as well, yet actually dared to speak so proudly. He was really too arrogant. Celestial maiden Yunhe set her eyes on Ling Han, and prepared to make a move, but while her eyes were fixed on Ling Han, a profound chill came to be in her heart, and she actually dared not attack. She instinctively felt that she would be harshly struck by Ling Han if she dared to move in the slightest. And would die an early, pitiable death. This was an intuition that she had gained only after advancing into the 5th Severance, and she trusted this kind of feeling very much. According to her elders, this was an early warning about danger, and she could not take it lightly. To drum up courage for herself, she drew out a sword. It was entirely jade blue in color, and looked like crystal. At the same time, there were multiple ancient seals carved on its blade. This is the Jade Moon Lake Life Sword, the precious tool that has been passed through the generations of Celestial Maiden Yunhe's clan. No, 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 this must be a subsidiary sword. Otherwise, how could Celestial Maiden Yunhe be allowed to take it out? Even if it is a subsidiary sword, it should still be extremely powerful. Why is Celestial Maiden Yunhe still not making a move? Everyone was stunned. It was as if Celestial Maiden Yunhe was dazed. She merely stood in position, but still made no move. Chapter 2283, Class Begins. Chapter 2283, Class Begins. Celestial Maiden Yunhe knew her own suffering. She did not dare to make a move at all. It was as if what she was facing was not a person, but rather a ferocious primitive beast. Once she made a move, she would be facing a terrifying counter, and would lose her life in an instant. And with her aura tightly locked down on, she did not dare even open her mouth, fearing that it, too, would result in an attack from Ling Han. Droplets of sweat streamed down her forehead, and her whole body was completely damp. She felt incredibly weary. It was not a physical weariness, but a spiritual exhaustion. She really wanted to lie down and take a good rest, not wanting to move even a single finger. Even if everyone could not see the storm brewing under the surface between Ling Han and Celestial Maiden Yunhe, they only had to see the layer of cold sweat on Celestial Maiden Yunhe's forehead, and they knew that she was presently in an extremely disadvantageous position. They were all astounded. Ling Han hadn't even made a move, all right? Why did Celestial Maiden Yunhe look like she had just gone through a fight, and it had been an extremely difficult, great battle at that? She looked like she was close to death. Ling Han smiled slightly, and withdrew his aura. Instantly, he became harmless again. However, with the appearance of the demon race, he appeared slightly eerie and frightening. At this, no one dared to speak any further. Even an idiot would know that Ling Han was indescribably powerful, and Celestial Maiden Yunhe was not even capable of making a move. Celestial Maiden Yunhe breathed a sigh of relief. She finally understood that Ling Han had defeated Defy with a single move, not because the latter was too weak, but rather because Ling Han was too strong. This person's strength had even surpassed the range of monarch tiers. However, it should be known that monarch stars would only emerge from the dividing soul tier onward, and it was the final stages of the dividing soul tier at that. How could there be monarch stars in the severing mundane tier? A monarch tier was the strongest among them. With both of them being monarch tiers, why was there such a huge gap between them? She composed herself, and said, "Everyone, please board the carriage. It is time that we should set out towards the 100 Battles Academy." No one spoke, and everyone merely boarded the carriage in silence. They were still in utter astonishment at how powerful Ling Han was. This carriage of Celestial Maiden Yunhe was extremely spacious. There was absolutely no problem even if over a dozen people boarded it together. Everyone sat down on the seats, appearing very reserved. From a certain aspect, this was also Celestial Maiden Yunhe's private domain. Ling Han boarded the carriage, and with a sweep of his gaze, he strode forwards with absolutely no reservations, and planted himself on the soft couch. It was naturally this that was the most comfortable seat here. Immediately, everyone turned to look at him, gritting their teeth and pursing their lips. That was Celestial Maiden Yunhe's private couch, and you actually dared to sit on it. Isn't this an offense to the beauty? Ling Han did not take the expressions of the masses to heart at all. He simply switched to a more comfortable position, crossing his legs. In fact, even his shoes were touching the sheets. Even if Celestial Maiden Yunhe had already experienced this once, she still wanted to thrash Ling Han. Now this guy was really too despicable. She had made up her mind, once Ling Han disembarked from the carriage, she would immediately discard this soft couch. However, seeing how Ling Han grabbed a towel from beside the couch to wipe himself, Celestial Maiden Yunhe almost passed out in fury. That was her personal towel. Not too long ago, she had just used it, and now Ling Han wiping himself with it was equivalent to indirect intimate contact between the two of them, causing a murderous urge to rise up in her. Everyone remembered the name B.A. They had understood by now. There was no way that they could possibly match Ling Han. They could only anticipate the big shots in the 100 Battles Academy would make a move after they enrolled, or maybe those elites that had already advanced into the 7th Lotus would do so. On the journey, everyone was especially quiet. The carriage rocked and swayed for half a year until it finally stopped, and Long Tu's voice rang out from outside. "Master, we have reached the 100 Battles Academy." Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. They had finally arrived, and there was no further need for them to face Ling Han. They had really been under enormous stress. They hurriedly alighted from the carriage, while Ling Han was the second last to disembark. When he had gotten off the carriage, Celestial Maiden Yunhe's irritated voice rang out. "Long Tu, discard everything that is in my carriage." "Right, It was not just Ling Han. She had also developed a grudge against everyone else. Long Tu did not understand, yet could only obey. How could he possibly dare to question her commands? The 100 Battles Academy was built at the foot of a mountain, with structures that stretched outward. There were a considerable number of greatly differing building styles among them. One was the style of the demon race, simple and crude, wild and primitive. Another was the style of the angel race, filled with luxury and unnecessary lavishness. Even a small house would be built with all effort and the best materials. There were also multiple caves, eerie and frightening. Those were allocated for the insect race. There were also stretches of forest, with the main colors being white and gold. This was to accommodate the holy beasts. Ling Han and the others entered into the academy. Celestial Maiden Yunhe made arrangements for them, so someone from the academy came out very soon, and conducted a selection process for them. Only those that had reached King tier at least would be qualified to become disciples of the 100 Battles Academy. Ling Han's heart was a little heavy because the King tiers of the foreign realm numbered far more than in the celestial realm. With just the numbers he had seen, there were astonishingly many of them, and in the greater environment of the entire foreign realm, this was definitely just a drop in the ocean. The overall level of this realm was higher than the celestial realms, so it could accommodate more prodigies and elites. Ling Han passed very easily. He was a monarch tier, and he would definitely be treated with great regard even in the forces of an 18th Lotus ancestral king. At present, he was a member of the demon race, so he was naturally assigned to stay in the demon quarters, staying together with his companions who likewise had red skin, honed heads, and tails. If Ling Han had been given the choice, he would have definitely chosen to stay in the angel quarters. They were at least easy on the eyes. The main theme of the demon quarters was fighting. It was like they were all filled with endless energy. Sometimes, there would not have been any conflict at all. They merely wanted to fight because they were in a good or bad mood. Ling Han could not care less, and simply lay down in his rooms to sleep, waiting for classes to start at the academy. He was truly very interested in the cultivation world and history of the foreign realm. Also, why did the foreign realm have to invade the celestial realm? It was clear that the celestial realm had an inferior overall level of cultivation, so what could they do even if they succeeded in their conquest? It was one thing for the others, but why would the heavenly venerable tiers of the foreign realm have to move? They really could not gain any form of benefit. There must be something I don't know, Ling Han thought. This was also the reason why he wanted to come here. Several days later, there was information from the academy. Class would begin tomorrow, and the main lecturer was a 9th Lotus elite. After waiting patiently for a day, Ling Han went with a large number of his companions towards the plaza of the academy. In the 4 directions of north, south, east, and west, each zone was clearly separated. The demon race was on the east side, the angel race on the west side, the holy beasts on the south side, and the insect race on the north side. There was definitely no one who sat randomly. Ling Han's gaze swept over the masses, and he was secretly astonished. The number of king tiers and emperor tiers here was really astonishing, with their majestic life essence soaring sky high. Previously, in the neutral zone, he had killed a great many prodigies through deception. Initially, he had thought that it would be a severe wound to the foreign realm, causing a vacuum to appear in the next few billion years, but from the look of things now, he had really been too optimistic. There were over 10,000 people here, and the strongest among them was 8th Lotus. In other words, they were immortal palace tiers, but there were not many of them. It was said that the academy would ordinarily nurture their students up to the 7th Lotus, and they would leave upon attaining the 7th Lotus. Only the really outstanding figures would be able to stay behind, and continue to enjoy the resources provided by the academy. Hence, the 7th Lotuses that appeared here were Emperor tiers, at least, and those 8th Lotuses were definitely Monarch tiers. For the sake of survival, an elite shot forwards, the pattern of 9th Lotus blooming on his forehead. This was an elite of the insect race. He was just a giant ant, completely dark red in color, his joints like metal. For the sake of survival, everyone roared as well, appearing extremely excited. Chapter 2284 Reality of the Realm War. Chapter 2284 Reality of the Realm War. If these people had shouted "Long live the foreign realm is invincible," and so on, Ling Han wouldn't have been surprised at all. However, to shout for survival. This was extremely baffling for Ling Han. Perhaps there was some inconceivable lie being told in the foreign realm? Instead of the foreign realm invading the celestial realm, perhaps they had been told that it was the celestial realm invading the foreign realm? Ling Han remained calmly seated. Right now, it was best for him to silently listen. "Do you know what kind of threat we're currently facing?" the Ninth Lotus Elite asked in an extremely solemn voice. Yes, everyone shouted. The Ninth Lotus Elite nodded, and continued, "The Dark Inverse Realm is currently attacking us. Their realm is higher in level than ours, and they possess innumerable elites. If they successfully breach our defenses, our only fate is to be massacred. Our realm will be engulfed by the Dark Inverse Realm, and our descendants will all be exterminated. Our existence will be comprehensively erased. So what's our final hope? Our final hope is to conquer that super low-level dimension, and to massacre its populace. Our realm can then engulf that super low-level dimension, and ascend to a higher level, allowing us to resist the Dark Inverse Realm. In fact, we might even be able to surpass the Dark Inverse Realm." Everyone replied in unison. This clearly wasn't their first time engaging in such a conversation. Upon hearing this, Ling Han was so astounded that he could barely speak. As it turned out, the foreign realm was also in a similar position to the celestial realm. They were currently being invaded by another higher-level realm. Their defenses might collapse at any time, leading to a massacre of their populace. When their defenses collapsed, could anyone survive the ensuing onslaught? The solution to this dilemma was also extremely simple. They would destroy the celestial realm, and use it to raise the level of their realm. By doing so, they could then resist or even defeat the Dark Inverse Realm. As it turned out, the foreign realm had always been engaged in a war on two fronts. On the one side, they were at war against an invading realm, and on the other side, they were the assailants trying to invade the celestial realm. No wonder the heavenly venerates were so proactive. At the end of the day, it was all for the sake of survival. Hang on. Ling Han shook his head in his mind. Heavenly venerates were already transcendent above regulations, so just how much would they be affected if they resided in a different heaven and earth? No one knew the answer to this question. Perhaps they wouldn't be affected, or perhaps they would. However, even Ling Han himself could recultivate using the regulations of the foreign realm, so how was it possible that heavenly venerates couldn't? Heavenly venerates were unfathomably powerful, so even if the foreign realm were destroyed, heavenly venerates like Heavenly Venerate Kai Yang could still enter the Dark Inverse Realm and live a leisurely life. After all, just take a look at the composed demeanor of the three heavenly venerates from the celestial realm. They couldn't care less about the perilous situation of the celestial realm. Instead, they embraced this opportunity to attack their rivals. Thus, there was definitely more to this than met the eye. However, it was a shame that this kind of secret naturally wouldn't be revealed to the masses. Only those in the highest positions could know. A sense of fatigue washed over Ling Han. What did it matter even if they could stop the foreign realm? Once the foreign realm fell to the Dark Inverse Realm, the next in line to fall would be the celestial realm. Moreover, if even the foreign realm couldn't resist them, just what chance did the celestial realm have? In addition, the foreign realm always referred to the celestial realm as a super low-level dimension, yet they still couldn't defeat it after such a long time. From this, it was clear that their level wasn't much higher. The same could be said for the Dark Inverse Realm. That being the case, how could they defend against an invasion from a medium-level or high-level realm? Just thinking about this was tiring. Would they have to battle forever, until the end of time? Ling Han shuddered, and his feeling of despair rapidly vanished. What replaced it was a boundless fighting spirit. If defeating the foreign realm were the end of his journey, would life not become a huge bore? Even though Ling Han had never admitted this before, he knew what he felt in his heart. In reality, he greatly enjoyed his current lifestyle. To continually challenge himself and take risks added excitement and flavor to his life. It was this kind of life that he desired, not an eternal and unchanging life. To battle against heaven, to battle against earth, and to battle against others. What boundless joy! A faint smile spread across his face. He brimmed with fighting spirit, and he could barely contain his urge to immediately charge into a higher-level dimension and battle to his heart's content. Moreover, the heaven and earth of the foreign realm is clearly more tolerant toward heavenly venerates. Regardless of whether heavenly venerate Kai Yang steps forward or attacks, the heaven and earth of the foreign realm has never targeted him. That being the case, might there exist beings transcendent above the heavenly venerable tier in higher-level dimensions? Ling Han mulled over this question in his mind. This wasn't impossible. Moreover, there was now evidence to support this speculation. Very well, the ninth lotus said. However, if we want to invade the celestial realm, we must first become accustomed to battling in their realm. The regulations of the two realms are different, though this won't affect weak cultivators like us. We won't be targeted by the heaven and earth of the celestial realm. However, it's a different story for those at or above the celestial king tier. Thus, we're unable to unleash our full battle prowess at the celestial realm. We must prepare for such a situation. Otherwise, engagement in this war might lead to your deaths. The audience had likely heard this warning many times before. However, they still nodded with solemn expressions. Once their invasion transformed into a full-scale war, they would charge into the celestial realm even if they hadn't become ancestral kings yet. They would accelerate the death of the celestial realm, thereby allowing the foreign realm to more quickly ascend in level. Today's lesson was nothing more than an opportunity to instill a sense of impending danger in everyone's mind. The Dark Inverse realm was waging an all-out war against them, and their situation was truly fragile and perilous. Only by conquering and engulfing the celestial realm could they be saved. As such, this was a righteous invasion. Ling Han was from the celestial realm, so he naturally wouldn't feel any sympathy for the foreign realm. Now, however, he at least knew why they insisted on invading the celestial realm. He also understood why there was so much support behind this invasion, and why the foreign realm could tolerate sacrificing generation after generation of prodigies. After a day of lessons, Ling Han couldn't help but feel tired and muddlehead. Afterward, he went to the library to read the relevant information. He had initially thought that the battle between the foreign realm and the celestial realm had been a huge secret, just like how few people in the celestial realm had known about the invasion launched by the foreign realm. However, he discovered that it was quite the contrary. This was no secret in the foreign realm, and it was instead used as a motivation for cultivators to grow stronger. Before long, Ling Han had already read a large number of books. The realm wars were extremely cruel, and victory for one party would mean defeat and extermination for another. Their entire realm would be dissolved, and their entire population would be erased. This was because living beings were the foundation of a realm. If they weren't culled to a certain degree, the heaven and earth that they existed in couldn't be engulfed. As such, the primary goal of the foreign realm after invading the celestial realm would be to massacre its residents. Afterward, the heaven and earth of the celestial realm would become extremely frail, allowing them to engulf it. When the two realms fused into one, the resulting realm would naturally be of a higher level. This also meant that a greater number of powerful beings could be born. Not only was the foreign realm invading the celestial realm, but the Dark Inverse realm was also invading the foreign realm. In reality, these realm wars had always been raging. In the past, heavenly venerates from the foreign realm had traveled to the Dark Inverse realm, and even to realms further beyond. They had discovered more secrets, and according to them, the entirety of the dimension was referred to as the Genesis world. There were countless realms, and they were divided into 4 levels: top level, high level, medium level, and low level. Both the foreign realm and the celestial realm were low-level dimensions. However, there were still countless other low-level dimensions, so it was possible to rank them in terms of strength. The celestial realm was most likely the weakest of the low-level dimensions. This was because they hadn't discovered any other neighboring realm apart from the foreign realm. Indeed, all ordinary realms would have two neighboring realms, one slightly stronger and one slightly weaker. If they didn't want to be engulfed by the stronger realm, they would only have one optionto engulf the weaker realm. Afterward, Ling Han discovered even more information. The celestial realm had only appeared 130 epochs ago, while the foreign realm had appeared 150 epochs ago. This was quite some difference. Chapter 2285 Invitation from Celestial Maiden Yunhe. Chapter 2285 Invitation from Celestial Maiden Yunhe. Even though 130 epochs seemed like a long time, in the Genesis world, 130 epochs was truly an insignificant amount of time. According to rumors, the top-level dimensions had all existed for at least hundreds of millions of epochs. In comparison, the celestial realm couldn't even be viewed as a grandson. After birth, a realm needed an exorbitant amount of time to grow to a state of perfection. Thus, in reality, the celestial realm had only experienced a rich cultivation culture for around 20 to 30 epochs. Moreover, it was only at this time that it collided with another realm, intertwining together and forming a passageway. A weaker realm hadn't appeared behind the celestial realm, and this meant that the realm either hadn't been born yet, or it was still in the process of growing. However, there would eventually come a day when it connected with the celestial realm. This was the unchanging cycle in the Genesis world. Old realms were continuously engulfed, while new realms were continuously born. On one side of the foreign realm, there was a connection point to the celestial realm, a platform from which they could launch their invasion. On the other side, there was a connection point to the dark inverse realm, a passageway from which the dark inverse realm could launch their invasion. On that side, the angel race and the holy beasts were responsible for the defenses. The foreign realm was engaged in war on two fronts. Ling Han was secretly astonished. Fortunately, light was opposed to darkness. Fortunately, the dark inverse realm was also invading the foreign realm. Otherwise, if the heavenly venerates from the foreign realm had attacked, the celestial realm would have most likely ceased to exist several epochs ago. The entire Genesis world is swept up in realm wars, and no one can escape from this reality, Ling Han said with a sigh. This was a cruel thought, yet it filled him with fighting spirit. At the same time, he was also weighed down with pressure. If an elite from a top-level or high-level dimension entered at this moment, could they perhaps exterminate all of their opponents in these low-level dimensions with their own strength? Strength. Only by becoming stronger could one stand up straight. Ling Han temporarily pushed his thoughts and curiosity of the realm wars aside. In any case, he would only become cannon fodder with his current strength. As such, his only option was to become stronger. He wished that the foreign realm could resist for a while longer, and he also wished that the celestial realm could resist for a while longer. He needed time to develop formidable power. The cultivation environment of the foreign realm was clearly superior to the celestial realms, since everyone was aware that they would be massacred by the dark inverse realm if they didn't first conquer and engulf the celestial realm. Thus, everyone prioritized cultivation. The heaven and earth of the foreign realm had also welcomed a prosperous age, with their celestial medicines far more abundant than in the celestial realm. The number of natural treasures was also greater, and this allowed the foreign realm to nurture countless astonishingly powerful prodigies and elites. In order to attack the celestial realm and defend against the dark inverse realm, the foreign realm had mobilized everyone that it could. For example, the 100 Battles Academy was one of the countless academies in the foreign realm. It was run by an ancestral king, and it was fully focused on nurturing the younger generation, thereby elevating the cultivation level of the entire foreign realm. Living beings were dependent on heaven and earth, and the power of living beings could also be fed back to heaven and earth. If everyone were as powerful as a dragon, the heaven and earth that they resided in would also become peerless in terms of power. It would suppress any assailants to an even greater degree. Ling Han involuntarily thought of the sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable and the others. They had blocked all information about the invasion by the foreign realm, and they had created a guise of peace. In reality, they were dampening the motivation of people, and they were weakening the power of heaven and earth. As such, it was only natural that the suppression provided by heaven and earth against the assailants was weak. Thinking further about their inaction, and Ling Han could categorically conclude that the three of them had zero intention of stopping the invasion by the foreign realm. Instead, they were weighing the celestial realm down, and they were eager to witness its destruction. So, why didn't they proactively turn traitors? This was because heavenly venerates weren't tolerated by the celestial realms heaven and earth. They would be targeted if they showed themselves, and they would more so suffer a backlash from heaven and earth if they dared to interfere. Killing one or two people naturally wouldn't be a problem. However, if they killed too many people, the karmic backlash would certainly be too great even for heavenly venerates to handle. Ling Han came to a sudden realization. He finally understood why the ancient realm had been separated in two, and why the people from the ancient realm weren't allowed to enter the celestial realm. This was because if the ancient realm became whole, more people would enter the celestial realm. And more people would advance to the severing mundane tier, dividing soul tier, and even higher cultivation levels. At that time, heaven and earth would become more powerful, which was something not desired by the three heavenly venerates. Of course, there might have been even more reasons that Ling Han couldn't think of. Forget about this. I should cultivate and try to advance to the dividing soul tier as soon as possible. I'm clearly at the second secret already, yet I have to suffer as a fifth severance cultivator. This is a terrible feeling, Ling Han muttered. He stood up and left the library, heading off to cultivate. Even though the 100 Battles Academy was only founded by a 10th Lotus ancestral king, the facilities in the academy were all top-notch. For example, the time cultivation chambers could accelerate time up to 1,000 times. However, it wasn't easy to enter such cultivation chambers. One needed to possess the most brilliant cultivation talent. Even though Ling Han was a monarch tier, he still didn't have the right to enter such a cultivation chamber. If he wanted to, he would need to display even more talent. Before he even started to cultivate, the Empress, Hu Niu, and bewitching Maiden Ru had already mastered the heaven-deceiving technique. Right now, they could genuinely wander around the foreign realm. Moreover, Hu Niu's and the Empress cultivation had already returned to the fifth severance. Meanwhile, bewitching Maiden Ru also successfully advanced from the Emperor tier to the Monarch tier. She also advanced to the fifth severance. This was, of course, thanks to the mystical power of the 100 Fruits tree. She was extremely fortunate, and she managed to advance after consuming just 3 fruits. Ling Han released the 3 of them from the Black Tower, and disguised them as residents of the foreign realm. After he used the heaven-deceiving technique to touch up their disguises, perhaps even ancestral kings wouldn't be able to see through them if they didn't look carefully. Without any hesitation, the 3 women all chose to disguise themselves as the angel race. This was for no reason bar the fact that they were beautiful. Regarding this choice, to say nothing of the Empress and bewitching Maiden Ru, even Hu Niu felt the same. Ling Han felt extremely vexed about this. The 3 women would all reside in the angel quarters, and not a single one would stay with him. Don't be sad, Ling Han. Niu will frequently come to visit you, Hu Niu said as she patted Ling Han's shoulder with a comforting expression. Ling Han could only shake his head as he led the 3 of them to the academy. The 100 Battles Academy was always open to recruiting new prodigies. Since the 3 women were all monarch tiers, they were naturally accepted without a hitch. In fact, their arrival caused some commotion in the angel quarters, since there weren't many monarch tiers even in the foreign realm, much less 3 stunningly beautiful monarch tiers. Ling Han spent almost half a year in the time cultivation chamber. However, he was eventually called out by someone. It was Yunhe. "BA, are you interested in joining my team?" the woman asked. Before, she had considered never making contact with Ling Han ever again lest she recalled the scenes of him humiliating her. However, she now had a necessary reason to invite him. To do what? Ling Han asked in a calm voice. Obtained an ancient map from my clan, and I discovered an incredible region. Perhaps this region will bring us great fortunes, Celestial Maiden Yunhe replied. Ling Han pondered for a moment. If he relied on himself to cultivate, he most likely would need tens of thousands of years to return to the second secret. This was already taking into account the resources provided by the Academy. However, if he obtained some natural treasures, this time would definitely be slashed by a great amount. He naturally wanted to return to the second secret as soon as possible. "When are you heading off?" he asked. "If Brother BA accepts my invitation, I'll go and contact a few more people. We can set off in around 10 days, Celestial Maiden Yunhe replied. Ling Han nodded in acknowledgement before returning to the time cultivation chamber to cultivate. Even if there were only 10 days left, he still wouldn't want to waste them. Celestial Maiden Yunhe couldn't help but feel gloomy. This man was actually so indifferent to her. There was nothing she could do about this. After all, he was a stinky bastard from the demon race who didn't know how to appreciate her beauty. This was how she consoled herself. Chapter 2286, Taken Fancy to. Chapter 2286, Taken Fancy to. 10 days passed, and Celestial Maiden Yunhe arrived as promised. Ling Han left the academy with her, and after walking around in a huge circle, they finally entered a small forest where there were already a dozen or so people waiting. They were all beautiful members of the angel race. Upon seeing them arrive, 3 beautiful women from the angel race blinked at him in unison. However, this wasn't seen by the others. They were none other than the Empress, Hunyo, and bewitching Maiden Ru. Why did the 3 of them also come? They were all monarch tiers, so it wasn't strange that they had been invited by Celestial Maiden Yunhe. However, it was strange that none of them had come to tell him. Perhaps they had wanted to give him a surprise. In any case, upon seeing that Celestial Maiden Yunhe had actually invited a demon, the remaining people all wore expressions of displeasure. What was the meaning of this? Celestial Maiden Yunhe, why did you invite a demon to our party? A man asked. He had golden yellow hair, and his skin was as smooth and delicate as could be. In fact, it was perhaps more well kept than that of most women. Celestial Maiden Yunhe had already predicted their displeasure, and she said with a faint smile, Brother BA possesses extraordinary strength, so he'll definitely be a huge help for this adventure. Haha, he's nothing but an ugly demon, the man said in disdain. So what if he's a monarch tier? We have a total of 7 monarch tiers here. Upon hearing this, Ling Han couldn't help but sigh with emotion in his mind. The 100 Battles Academy was only one of almost 1,000 academies in the foreign realm, yet there were already 7 monarch tiers standing before him. The celestial realm simply couldn't rival this. It was no wonder that it was still the foreign realm that was attacking and comprehensively suppressing the celestial realm even after so many years. Han Feng, watch your words. Celestial Maiden Yunhe immediately said in warning. She had witnessed Ling Han's cold-bloodedness before, and she was also well aware of his heaven-defying power. She had been completely powerless before him. Celestial Maiden Yunhe, have you been deceived by this brat's bombastic words? The man sneered. Celestial Maiden Yunhe was a rising star in the angel quarters of the 100 Battles Academy. Before the arrival of Hunyo and the others, she had been a unique existence with no rival. Countless men had been enchanted by her. However, Celestial Maiden Yunhe had never given them the time of the day, much less become someone's partner. Now, however, she was actually being so friendly with a demon that naturally caused them to feel dissatisfied. This man was simply the first to step forward. Celestial Maiden Yunhe furrowed her delicate brows. In reality, she was also extremely displeased with Ling Han. He had messed with her things without permission, and he also treated her with such apathy. If it weren't for his extraordinary power, and if it weren't for the fact that he could greatly increase their safety on this adventure, she definitely wouldn't have invited him. If you don't want to fight alongside Brother BA, you're free to leave right away. I won't stop you, Celestial Maiden Yunhe said in a calm voice. Everyone exchanged glances, and their expressions of displeasure became even greater. They felt like Celestial Maiden Yunhe was favoring Ling Han far too much. No matter how they looked, they couldn't see any redeeming qualities in the demon. Brother BA, is it? I want to ask for some advice, the man said. He glanced at Ling Han, and his lips curled up in a light smile. Ling Han looked at Celestial Maiden Yunhe, and asked, "It's fine if I kill a fool like him, right?" Celestial Maiden Yunhe hurriedly shook her head, saying, "Han Feng is the young master of the Golden Sun clan, so please go easy on him, Brother Ba. "Oh, okay then," Ling Han said with a smile. Upon hearing this, the angels became even more displeased. They had yet to fight, but the two of them had already concluded the victory of the demon in advance. How preposterous was this? After all, Han Feng was also a 5 Leaves monarch tier. Even if there were a power gap between monarch tiers, it wouldn't be so great, would it? Very well. Very well. The man said with a dark expression. He directly retrieved a glowing treasured sword which almost looked as if it were transparent. With a shake of his hands, 10 symbols instantly materialized on the sword. 10-symbol treasured tool, everyone exclaimed. In the foreign realm, the power of treasured tools was completely decided by the number of symbols that decorated them. However, at the 6th lotus, the upper limit was only 10 symbols. Even so, it was still extremely difficult to achieve. The materials needed and the skill requirement of the weaponsmith were far too great. Even though they were all emperor tiers or monarch tiers, it was still extremely difficult for them to obtain 10-symbol treasured tools. Generally speaking, they would only possess 8-symbol treasured tools. Even 9-symbol treasured tools were extremely rare. Han Feng had retrieved a 10-symbol treasured tool right away, and this was a clear sign that he was indeed burning with fury. He wanted to defeat Ling Han in a single strike. Come. With the treasured tool in hand, Han Feng instantly became filled with confidence. With his might as a monarch tier and the power of this 10-symbol treasured tool, it was only natural that he was now invincible. "Since you're asking for a beating, I'll satisfy your itch," Ling Han said in a calm voice. With a casual wave of his hand, he pressed down at the man. "Audacious," the man said with a humph. He raised his sword and slashed down at Ling Han. Wang! There was a brilliant flash of light. Ling Han didn't pay any heed to this, and his hand continued to press down. Pa! The sword light instantly crumbled, and Ling Han's hand was like a mountain as it pressed Han Feng to the ground. Han Feng lay sprawled, his face buried in the ground. Everyone was stunned. Han Feng had been defeated in a single exchange. One had to realize that he had retrieved a 10-symbol treasured tool, which could greatly increase his battle prowess. Yet, he still couldn't block a single strike from Ling Han. Celestial Maiden Yunhe seized this opportunity to ask, "I take it that no one doubts Brother Ba's strength anymore?" Even though she had already been aware of Ling Han's strength, this scene still caused her heart to waver. Everyone was speechless. If Ling Han were from the angel race, they would definitely walk up to him with delight. He would be like a shining star. Now, however, they only felt increasingly jealous of Ling Han. He was only a mere demon, so how could he be so freakish? "Welcome to the team, Brother Ba," a man said with a smile. However, his smile was extremely forced. They exchanged glances, and they already reached a tacit understanding. Afterward, they would isolate Ling Han and give him the silent treatment. Fortunately, even though Celestial Maiden Yunhe had seemingly fallen to him, there were still 3 stunningly beautiful women on the team. None of them was inferior to Celestial Maiden Yunhe. "Let's head off," Celestial Maiden Yunhe said with a wave of her hand. After setting off, she introduced the other team members to Ling Han. Ling Han didn't pay any heed to the others, but he couldn't help but laugh out loud when he heard the names of Hu Niu and the others. One was called Niu, one was called Xing, and one was called Ru. They were truly lazy, and they simply used a character from their real name. Upon seeing Ling Han's smile, Celestial Maiden Yunhe immediately said in warning, "Brother Ba, it's best that you don't try to chase them." "Why?" Ling Han asked with a smile. Did he need to chase them? They were already his wives. "Someone has already taken a fancy to them," Celestial Maiden Yunhe replied. "So I'm not allowed to chase them then?" Ling Han mused with a smile. Celestial Maiden Yunhe was instantly pissed off upon hearing this. She was as beautiful as a celestial maiden, yet he was completely apathetic as if he were blind. Despite that, he was attracted to the 3 of them at first glance. How was she any inferior to them? Just what kind of tastes did this rascal demon have? She humphed, and said, I might as well tell you then. Do you know who Yu Yuan is? No, Ling Han replied with an honest shake of his head. He had been immersed in cultivation recently, so how could he have had time to worry about other matters? Celestial Maiden Yunhe was rendered speechless. You don't even know Yu Yuan? Can we still continue this conversation? He's a monarch star, she said in a solemn voice. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.